funny dude, man. Yeah, ready. طيب عليك السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن نبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم يغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله وأحسن هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة كل بدعة ضلالة كل ضلالة في النار. We continue in the chapter Kitab al-Nikah by the great illustrious scholar Al-Hafiz Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah rahmatun wasi'ah, the one who died 852 after the hijrah of Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We were speaking about the different conditions of nikah and how it's a prerequisite and it's an obligation for it to be fulfilled in order for a marriage to be valid. It says, أَمَّا شُرُوطُهُ فَهِيَ أَرْبَعَةٌ. As we talked about, it has to be a wali. A wali has to be what? Has to be involved and his permission has to be sought. And likewise, there has to be two witnesses. And we said the witnesses have to be men. Two upright men. Shahidain adlain. Uprightness as far as in the religion and what they openly profess and what they openly manifest of uprightness in the religion. Whether it be from the rights, for example, of monotheism of Allah and also displaying the tawheed of Allah and also praying 5 times a day. All those affairs of uprightness which also needs to be present in the wali. Also likewise, التراضي بين الزوجين بأن يرضى كل منهما بالآخر. We talked about this last week. We said likewise, both parties have to be pleased with one another. التراضي بين الزوجين بأن يرضى كل منهما بالآخر. There has to be contentment, and both parties have to be satisfied and be content with one another. Meaning that one cannot force the other, or for example, one aspect coerces or forces the other to marry the other. All those affairs are, as we said, are impermissible with the condition that we said, or the exception we mentioned last week, unless the woman is not mumayyiza aqila. She's not mumayyiza aqila. We said the meaning by mumayyiza aqila, that she does not have the tamyiz to know what is beneficial for herself. The origin of the asl is that a woman is not forced to be married whatsoever, whether she be a what? Thayyib, or she be a bikr, whether she be a woman that's been married previously, which is called a thayyib, or a bikr, or a woman as a what? A virgin. They're not to be coerced or forced to be married whatsoever, as that's prohibited in Islam. But with the exception, like we said, that the woman is not mumayyiza aqila, that she does not have the distinguishment to know what is beneficial for herself, and she does not comprehend or have that aql, but we said Aql here means that understanding, to know what is good for herself. For in that case here, then the wali, meaning her father, can marry her off to who he sees to be beneficial for his daughter, if she does not have that tamyiz, or that aql. And when he said aql here, doesn't mean the usual meaning of aql, meaning intellect, or be coherent around or coherent of what takes place. The meaning here in this context means understanding. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ, will you not understand? So aql can also mean understanding and using your intellect in a proper manner by understanding and comprehending. But the asl is that a woman is not to be forced or coerced to be married whatsoever. That's prohibited. With that exception that we mentioned and said, what everyone? That she's not mumayyiza aqila. That she does not have the distinguishment to know what is beneficial for her. And she can distinguish between what is good for her and what is not good for her. And also that she has lack of understanding. Because some women don't have proper understanding as far as what's beneficial for them. And the wali, meaning the father, will come in and look for a man that is befitting or suitable for her daughter, or his daughter, for his daughter. Because some women do not have that tamyiz, and they don't have that good fahm, that understanding, to know what's good for them. A lot of women just base things upon emotions and how a man can emotionally influence her, and that might not be a suitable man for her. Right, everyone? Or a woman, her emotions has to be rocked or shifted some type of way, says some good words, it's done deal, right? So, but that exception is that if she's not mumayyiza aqila, then the father could come in and marry off to who he sees to be what? Suitable for her. That's the exception. But the origin of the asl in Islam is that a woman does not what? Is not forced or coerced to be married to anyone. As the hadith of what we stopped at last lesson in regards to that. Excuse me. Also we said from the shurut al-nikah, in which some of Ahl ilm say it's a shart, it's a condition, is i'lan al-nikah, the announcement of the marriage. As we said last week, that even a Shaykh al-Imam Salih Fawzan ibn Abdullah al-Fawzan hafidhallah wa ra'ahu wa talallah fi umrihi bil-a'mal al-salihah, that he had mentioned in his commentary that for those things that validate one's marriage is i'lan al-nikah, that the nikah has to be what? Has to be announced. Rather, he said that's a condition in validating the nikah. He's upon that opinion. So we encourage our brothers and sisters in this community and everywhere else that if one marries, then he should perform the walima, or as it says from what Ahl ilm specify and say, also from announcing the wedding or announcing the marriage is by beating the duf or the ghirbal, which is from the affairs of the women. That the women hit the duf, and that's khassa lahun or bihin. That affair is only specifically for them. But i'lan al-nikah or announcing nikah takes place by one or two affairs, or by the two affairs that we mentioned. We said number one is what, everyone? By either by having the walima, and secondly by hitting the duf. And we said it's not a drum where it's a beat or musical type of beat or rhythm. Rather, beating the duf is just like hitting it, and it's not played in a manner where it's musical, or it has a melodious type of way when it is hit. So we said, from these are the shurut al-nikah. We said, notice that Sheikh Salih Fawzan said that as from the affairs that actually validates the nikah. And that he even mentions, it says that the nikah is batil if one does not announce it by either having the walima or what? Or beating the duf for the women. So to stay away from khilaf, we tell and highly emphasize and encourage the brothers and sisters to just have a walima, so they can guard themselves from falling inside of khilaf. For one to have the walima, it will conclude the matter, finalize it, the nikah be valid, and then one could just go on with his daily affairs. طيب. we were speaking about in regards to the woman who are the two categories that we mentioned, which is called a-thayyib, tha, ya, ba, thayyib, and a bikr, ba, kaf, ra, bikr. The hadith concerning those two characteristics, those two women, not characteristics, two women, وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه, that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم mentioned, said, لا تنكح الأيم حتى تستأمر ولا تنكح البكر حتى تستأذن. قالوا يا رسول الله وكيف إذنها؟ قال أن تسكت. والحديث متفق عليه. The authority Abu Hurairah رضي الله عنه, that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم mentioned, said that the ayyim, that a woman who's a ayyim, meaning a thayyib, the woman who's been previously married, is not married off until she is consulted. Hatta tustamar, until you seek her command, meaning she's consulted. So the thayyib, the woman who's a what? A thayyib is a woman that's been married what? Previously. That's the meaning of thayyib. That she's been married previously. Or from before. لا تنكح الأيم حتى تستأمر, until she is consulted. ولا تنكح البكر حتى تستأذن, and a woman who's a virgin is not married off until it is sought her permission. And he said, O Messenger of Allah, how is her permission? He said that she remains quiet. And we said the meaning of that is that a woman who's usually, or a woman who's a virgin, that usually in most cases, if she has not been influenced by the outside influences, for example, the ideologies of the West, or the Western society, if a woman was left upon her natural innate disposition and it has not been influenced or affected by these surroundings, she will be modest and shy. She will be very modest and she will be shy. That's the origin of how Allah created women, until these outside influences come and alter it. But the origin is what? The origin is that a woman who's a virgin, usually in most cases, she's what? She's modest and she's what? She's shy. And the Prophet ﷺ said, well, how is her permission sought? He said that she remains quiet. And she remains quiet. So here in this instance is telling, these are from the narrations that affirm in our religion that what? A woman is not coerced or forced to marry anyone until she's consulted and her permission is sought. Also likewise the ahadith on the authority of Ibn Abbas, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال الثيب أحق بنفسها من وليها البكر تستأمر وإذنها سكوتها رواه مسلم. There's another narration that also puts emphasis on the one previously, where it says, الثيب أحق بنفسها. The woman who's been married previously is more deserving and has more right over herself. Has more right over herself than her wali. Meaning that her wali is not for him to come in and what? Dictate this and you have to marry, I'm forced, you have to marry such and such. La. She's more deserving of herself, over herself than her wali. And it says in this narration, al-bikru tustamar, that the woman who's a virgin is consulted. The woman who's a virgin likewise is consulted, and her permission is her remaining quiet, or her quietness. Rawah Muslim. So if you look in your books, these are all there. Ya ma'ashal ikhwa, you don't need to write the hadith down. See your books. It should be in there already. If I'm not mistaken, all the ahadith are there. You don't have to write the hadith. You can write a little bit of fawaid based upon what the ulama mentioned, but you don't have to write the hadith. وفي لفظ ليس للولي مع الثيب أمر واليتيمة تستأمر. There's another narration which is the same or given the same meaning, where it says ليس للولي مع الثيب أمر واليتيمة تستأمر. ليس للولي مع الثيب أمر. It is not for the wali with a woman who's been married previously, amrun, a command, meaning to force her. And the woman who's a yatima, of course the virgin here, likewise she's also consulted. وَالْيَتِيمَةُ تُسْتَأْمَرُ رواه أبو داود والنسائي وصححه ابن حبان. All of these is to show, like we said, there is no ikrah, there is no forcement or coercing in Islam to force anyone to do anything. وهذا الحديث, in which the great Imam, he goes on to explain these narrations. The first one is on the authority of Abu Hurairah, and the second one is on the authority of Ibn Abbas. So both of them is to show that in Islam, that a woman is not forced to marry anyone. She's not forced to marry anyone. And these narrations is upon us to have, in order to clarify to the non-Muslims that there's no coercion in Islam, or no one is forced to be married in Islam. And if something or someone from a country does this, then it's from their own cultural type of ways, which has nothing to do with the religion. It's a cultural practice, but rather it's in contrary to what the religion commands. It's in contrast in what the religion commands. So if one tries to say the Muslim country forced this woman to get married, then do not accuse the religion. The religion is free from that action. Rather, that's a practice of what they're doing from their own selves, and the religion is free from that. You understand, everyone? And that's just a mere cultural practice that goes against the religion. As they say, taqaleed or adat. Taqaleed is like traditions, or adat is like cultural practices. Anything, if it opposes the religion, then it's incumbent upon the one to leave off his tradition, or leave off his cultural practice, and give precedence to the religion. As that is what we've been commanded in the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنٍ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَن يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ وَمَن يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ ضَلَّ ضَلَالًا مُبِينًا. It is not for believing woman or believing man if Allah and His Messenger have decreed an affair that they will have some other alternative from themselves. And whoever disobey Allah as His Messenger, then he has gone far, far astray. طيب. So these concluded, this is where we stopped our last lesson, right, everyone? So the woman and the man is not forced to do anything. The woman is not forced to marry a specific man. With the condition, we said, with one exception, which is what, everyone? With the exception that, that she's not mumayyiza aqila. That's the only exception. Because there are women out here that don't really have that distinguishment to know what's good for them. Some women out there, they just, as soon as a man says something nice to her, khalas, it's a done deal. You understand? Say it again. They don't know what's beneficial for him. All they know is that he said these nice words to me, he treats me in a manner that I've never been treated. Khalas, he's done. Even though you can see right through the games. And I know everyone knows what I'm talking about. You hear the games that men play, you can see right through it. You can see it because you are You're a man. Or probably before Islam you might have did the same thing. But you can see past the games. You understand what everyone's saying, everyone? You can see right through it. But she can't see it because her emotions is blinding her. So in this instance is to show this exception that if a woman is mumayyiza aqila, she does not have those characteristics, then the wali, the father, come in and see who's beneficial for his daughter for her to marry. Everyone understand? And that's in regards to what happened with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq when he married his daughter Aisha radiallahu anha, our mother, to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Right, everyone? Everyone understand? Jayyid. طيب. The next narration, it says, عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تزوج المرأة المرأة ولا تزوج المرأة نفسها. رواه ابن ماجه. ورجاله ثقات. حديث الصحيح والدار القطني. جيد. When the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned said, A woman does not marry another woman off. So you see on the news, or you see certain people practicing, you see a woman is the Imam or the Wali. All these things are incorrect. It goes and opposes the religion. The Prophet ﷺ clearly mentions, says, لا تزوج المرأة المرأة. A woman does not marry another woman, meaning marry her off. In these cases, at times also in regards to being lesbians too, especially in these days. وَلَا تُزَوِّجُ الْمَرْأَةِ نَفْسَهَا. And also, a woman does not marry herself. She does not marry herself. رواه ابن ماجه والدارقطني ورجاله ثقات. A woman does not marry another woman off, nor does she marry herself off. The great Imam صالح فوزان, he goes on to say, يعني فلا تزوج مثلا بنتها أو أختها أو قريبتها لأنها ليس لها ولاية في عقد النكاح على البتات. For a woman does not marry her daughter off, for example, or her sister, or her relative, because a woman does not have the wilaya for her to be a wali. She does not have wilaya, meaning for her to have that protection to be a wali. In the affairs regards to marriage, in regards to the affairs of marriage, in regards to the affairs of marriage. Jayyid? So a woman does not marry herself off, nor does she marry her daughter off, or her sister, or any one of her relatives. Rather, those affairs are from the salahiyat, or from the affairs of the men. It's from their ways or from their protection that they're the one that what? Guards the women. The men. The men guard and protect the women. And they're the ones who conduct in these affairs besides the women. You understand, everyone? So wilaya, as a lot of the non-Muslims try to say, see you men, they're just exercising your power. No. Allah Ta'ala has made us in charge of these affairs to protect the women, to guard them, to protect them. So they're not taken advantage of and laughed at. As that's what's going on here in this country, left and right. Women are used and utilized just like toys. Islam calls for the men to be in charge of their affairs, to guard and protect them, to make sure that they're not taken advantage of, and their honor and their wealth and everything else is protected. So that's the reason why the women are not allowed to conduct in these matters, in which they are from the salahiyat, from the affairs in which, or those who conduct in it are the men. So we gather from this that a woman does not that the woman is not forced, she's not coerced, whether she be a thayyib, a woman that's been married previously, or or a bikr, or a virgin. Also likewise, we gather from these narrations that the woman is not allowed to marry herself off, or marry her daughter, her sister, or any of her relatives. Rather, those are from the affairs of the men, to marry the women and conduct and look in the affairs to see and make sure that these affairs are conducted properly. So you see, these narrations is to show, as I said, we take an opportunity to look at the mahasin, the beautiful things of the religion, in which Shaykh Abdur-Rahman al-Sa'di, or Sa'di, you can say both, Sa'di or Sa'di, you can say both. The Shaykh Abdur-Rahman al-Sa'di, he said that it's binding upon us to look at the mahasin, the good things of the religion, to show how properly organized it is. It's not chaotic. It has everything is prioritized, and it's not prioritized, but it's in order. Everything is put in its proper place. Narration to show what validates the marriage, what does not validate the marriage. If this is the case, then this is supposed to be done this way. It's supposed to be done this way. This shows they call it the shumuliyah, the comprehensiveness of our religion. Has every detail put in its proper place to show how perfect the religion is. And that the more you learn it, the more you increase and augment your iman, to have surety that which you're upon is the haqq. You see in every aspect of the religion, there's text to give us guidance in regards to that matter. Whether it be in siyasa, whether it be in aqidah, whether it be in belief, whether it be in manners, whether it be in dealing with one's wife, whether it be in even how marriages are conducted. And these are the examples of that. In regards to a virgin, what you do, or in regards to a woman who's been married previously, what does she do, to the end of it. So we take time out to look at these details in order to what? Increase us to know that what we're upon is the haqq and the beauty of the religion, to show how comprehensive it is. You understand, everyone? So that's what we're saying in regards to these narrations, to take time out sometimes to look at how comprehensive it is. And also another narration in which we talked about a couple of weeks ago in regards to what's called Nikah al-Shighar, which is the next narration that we're about to read now. Can you read it for me, Abu Khalil? Nafi'. This was the authority of Nafi' an ibn Umar. And that narration is famous. It's an isnad. It's called, the narration, notice it says in your books, Nafi' an ibn Umar. If you notice, the asl goes back to who? Put this in your books, this is important. This, I'm giving you a latifa fa'ida hadithiyya. Hadith is, I don't know the number in the English. I'm giving them, ooh, the sun just came right out, didn't it? Let me move the table over. The benefit that I wanted to give everyone, the isnad is originally upon Imam Malik. Malik ibn Anas, Imam Dar al-Hijrah, al-Usbuhi, the great Imam, Imam Malik. The isnad is not written in your book, Imam Malik. It's not in your book. The origin of the isnad starts from Imam Malik. But it doesn't have Imam Malik in there. That isnad is very famous for people who study hadith, an Malik, an Nafi', an ibn Umar. You'll hear that isnad a lot. An Malik, an Nafi', an ibn Umar. An Malik, an Nafi', an ibn Umar. What's this in your books? Nafi' and who? Who comes right after it? Ibn Umar. The origin of the isnad goes back to Imam Malik. Trust me. That's a famous isnad. An Malik, an Nafi', an ibn Umar. عن مالك عن نافع عن ابن عمر. جيد. ايه تفضل ابو خليل.
Without any dowry being paid to either. Agreed upon. And both agree that the explanation of the meaning of Shighar is the same.
جيد. أحسنت. On the authority of Nafi' عن مالك عن نافع. Malik, Imam Malik. Malik ibn Anas, Imam Dar al-Hijrah. As you know, he was the great Imam who was in the city of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's why they used to call Imam Malik Imam Dar al-Hijrah. Imam Malik ibn Anas, Sahibu, or the one who's the great, or the author of the great treatise al-Muwatta. Al-Muwatta. Imam Malik ibn Anas al-Usbuhi, Imam Dar al-Hijrah, who from his talamid, from his students, was Imam Shafi'i. And from Imam Shafi'i, his student Muhammad bin Idris, Imam al-Shafi'i al-Qurashi, also likewise who came from him was Imam Ahmad. Imam Ahmad was the student of Imam Shafi'i. طيب. The Nisnad says on the authority of Anas, عن Malik ibn Anas, the Imam Dar al-Hijrah, عن نافع, عن Ibn Umar, the Prophet ﷺ prohibited a type of nikah, prohibited a type of marriage, which is called a shighar. Called a shighar. A shighar. Also the word shighar, as we'll talk about, means al-khulu. Means for something to be void of. It means al-khulu. Al-khulu is like a, not something to be empty or void of. Al-khulu, to be empty or void of. The linguistic meaning, how it's attached to here, meaning that the marriage is void of a sadaq, a dowry. It's void of a dowry, as we'll talk about inshallah. Firstly, notice that Ibn Umar said that the Prophet ﷺ prohibited what? This type of nikah, which we'll explain, which is called shighar. I already talked to the brothers and sisters about this type of nikah 2 weeks ago. But this will refresh in our memories, and it will put the information, it will give it more ground, and it will allow us to memorize it better. But I already spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. The type of nikah, what they call a shighar, as it says in your books. Notice he said the Prophet ﷺ prohibited this. This takes the hukum or the ruling of a hadith. Right, everyone? If he said the Prophet ﷺ prohibited, then that takes a ruling as if the Prophet ﷺ said it, as a hadith. طيب. Now the question is, والشغار أن يزوج الرجل ابنته على أن يزوجه الآخر ابنته وليس بينهما صداق. The shighar, that a man marries his ibnah, that a man marries his daughter off with the condition that the other marries his daughter off to him. Meaning they marry, like for example, my daughter, Abu Khalil, you have a daughter. I marry my daughter to you with the condition that you marry your daughter to me, and there's not any dowry. The dowry is that we married each other off to each other, as far as your daughter to me and my daughter to you. That's what they call nikah al-shighar. Now, is this speech right here, a shighar, where it says in the hadith that the shighar is that a man marries his daughter off with the condition that the other marries his daughter off, and they did not have a sadaq. Is that from the speech of the Prophet ﷺ, or is that from the tafsir? Is that from the speech of Nafi', or is that from the speech of what? Ibn Umar. That's the question. We know it's not from the Prophet ﷺ. So this tafsir, or this type of detail, is it from the Rawi? Is it from the narrator, who is either Nafi' or Ibn Umar? Who's it from? We're going to say inshallah. Number one, we want to say that this type of marriage is batil. We need to discuss the validity of this marriage. Is it valid or not? The marriage is batil. It's unacceptable. Or it's unaccepted and it's not valid. Meaning with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we know in the dunya, people can do what they want. And they can go on social media bragging about, hey, see, we got married this way, as a lot of people do these days. I've seen crazy things. I couldn't believe it. 2 Muslim women getting married. I'm like, huh? 2 Muslim women getting married. You see some very extremely strange. Yes, it's out there. So a person can brag about their marriage all day, but with Allah ta'ala in the hereafter on the day of resurrection, what? Batil. It's unaccepted. So you can do what you want in this world, but in the hereafter, there's accountability. Where it says, من أنواع النكاح الباطلة, from that which is from the nikah that is batil, the Shaykh Salih Fawzan even mentions it says, he said from those marriages are invalid, huwa nikah al-shighar. That's a nikah, what they call a shighar. He says, when nikah al-shighar, he says, this is from the tafsir of the Rawi, who is Nafi', who is the Mawla or the freed slave of Ibn Umar. Nafi' is the freed slaves, the Mawla, freed slave of Ibn Umar. So the kalam or the speech that you see here, or the tafsir or the detail here is from who? Nafi'. It's from Nafi'. Sheikh Muhammad Bazmul Hafidhullah Ra'ah, when he explained al-Muwatta, and I was listening to the explanation of it in some of the classes, he said the exact same thing. Sheikh Muhammad Bazmoon, when he was explaining this hadith in his book, in the book that he was explaining, which is Muwatta by Imam Malik, he said also likewise, this speech here is from the tafsir of Nafi'. It's not from the kalam or the speech of the Prophet ﷺ. Rather, this detail was given from Nafi'. It was given from Nafi'. He says, إِذَا الرَّاوِي أَدْرَى بِمَرْوِيهِ. And I remember this is exactly what he said. He said, إِذَا الرَّاوِي أَدْرَى بِمَرْوِيهِ. That the narrator is more knowledgeable of what he narrates. The narrator is most knowledgeable of what he narrates. So he understands what he's narrating. So the tafsir that he gives is accepted. Even when Sheikh Salih Fawzan mentions the same thing. He says, أن يزوج الرجل موليته على أن يزوجه الآخر موليته ولا مهر بينهما فيجعل امرأة في مقابل امرأة. He said that the man marries who he's in charge of, meaning his daughter, but it's not exclusively only for his daughter. Even Sheikh Muhammad Bazmool in the Sharh Muwatta, notice it says in the hadith that he marries his daughter off when you marry your daughter off to me and I marry my daughter off to you, for example. He says not only specifically for that. He says any type of woman that the man is in charge over, or he is over her affairs, it's the same thing. For example, you marry your sister off to me and I marry my sister off to you. Or for example, I marry my aunt, or I marry my mother to you, and you marry your mother to to me. So for those who are in charge of their affairs, it's still as a type of nikah shighar. It doesn't matter whether it's your daughter or your sister or your mother. All of it is prohibited. So no one try to say it's only exclusively for it's just my daughter. And they'll still try to say it again, well, it's not my daughter, it's my mother. So it's not nikah shighar as it says in the hadith. So try to play some games. You understand? Rather, the hadith is comprehensive for anyone from whom the man is in charge of her affairs, whether it be a mother, daughter, sister, and the likes. Everyone understand? So it says here, also likewise, it's the same thing. They do not have a diary specified. Also likewise renders the marriage invalid. It says, وَلَا مَهْرَ بَيْنَهُمَا. They do not have a dowry in the marriage. He says, for the problem is, فَيَجْعَلْ امْرَأَةً فِي مُقَابِلِ امْرَأَةٍ. He makes a woman in exchange for another woman. In it is like an exchange. It's almost like they're being utilized, as their merchandise. You understand? وهذا التفسير من الراوي قيل إنه من نافع وقيل إنه من ابن عمر وقيل إنه من مالك وقيل إنه من تفسير الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم. There's been different statements that's been made from Ahl Ilm. Some people say it's from Nafi', some say it's from Ibn Umar, some said it's from Malik. He said, but that's what he mentioned. It says here, he said, what is apparent here is that is what? فَسَّرَهُ الرَّاوِي هُوَ النَّافِعِ مَوْلَى ibn Umar. In regard, also, in addition to that, with the great Sheikh in Mecca, Sheikh Muhammad Bazmool likewise mentioned and said that the speech here, what is apparent, is that it's from Nafi'. And also likewise it says that the tafsir of it is maqbool, that a man marries his muliya, that this type of marriage is is prohibited and it's also invalid. Now we said in the last class, and I remind the brothers and sisters of this, وَالنَّهْيُ هَلِ النَّهْيُ يَقْتَضِي الْفَسَادِ. A prohibition from the Prophet ﷺ. Does a prohibition from the Prophet ﷺ necessitate invalidity of something? For example, we learn in usul al-fiqh, if you go back and learn usul al-fiqh, you have a prohibition that's connected. The prohibition is connected to that same exact action. Where if it's connected to the action, then it would necessitate the invalidity of it. Meaning, for example, the Prophet ﷺ, which is the famous hadith in regards to salah, where the Prophet ﷺ talked about the man who did not pray correctly. He says, "Irji' fasalli fa innaka lam tusalli." Go back and pray your salah over again, for verily you did not what? Pray. The Prophet ﷺ, when he told him to go back and pray, this necessitated that salat was what? Batil. And then he taught him how to pray correctly. You have another prohibition of the Prophet ﷺ that is not connected with that action. Something outside or connected, the prohibition was not connected with that specific action. For example, I said this a couple of weeks ago. A Prophet ﷺ commanded that a woman not travel except that she has a what? A mahram with her. So a woman now performs hajj without a mahram. That prohibition of her traveling out the mahram, does it invalidate her hajj? We say no. Because the prohibition has nothing to do with what? With hajj. However, she fell into a major sin, which is to travel without a what? Mahram. So she still has to make tawbah, but her hajj, if she performs it with all the prerequisites fulfilled, it is still what? Valid. You understand, everyone? These type of tafasil, or these type of precise, accurate details is what the ulama give, which is from the affairs of usul al-fiqh. That's the reason why they put in the books, does the prohibition necessitate invalidity of the action? Here, in this instance, it's an example of the first type, where the prohibition does necessitate what? The invalidity of that action. For example, the Prophet ﷺ prohibited what? Shighar, or nikah al-shighar. That necessitates that it is what? Batil, invalid. Because the prohibition is connected with the actual what? Action. You understand? But in regards to certain prohibitions, if you look at certain acts, for example, the woman traveled. She didn't have a mahram, but she did it. So a woman was trying to say, well, I'm doing a righteous action. I'm trying to perform hajj. I want to perform hajj. But we know that from the hajj, from the affairs in which a woman needs is istita'ah. She has the ability to do it. If she doesn't have the ability to do it, then the obligation falls. And from those, no, if one doesn't have the ability, they don't have to perform hajj. They don't have the ability. As far as the istita'ah maliyah. But in regards to her traveling out of mahram, that's what? Something that will hold her back from performing hajj. She needs to have a mahram with her. طيب. Now she says, I want to go and perform hajj. I'm doing a righteous action. Why can I just skip over this hadith, not having a what? A mahram, so I could do this righteous action, inshallah. We say no. Even though you performed it, but you still fell into a major sin, which is regards to what? Traveling without a mahram. So a woman will have to make tawbah for Allah Ta'ala for that action. Now a person who's ignorant will come along and say, sister, he'll go to another extreme and say, sister, your hajj is batil because you travel without a mahram. You understand? That's the reason why the ulama bring these type of details, because it's very important. So you won't fall into saying upon Allah what you have no knowledge of. So a person would say, Naam, your hajj is valid because the prohibition of the Prophet ﷺ had nothing to do with hajj. But still it's incumbent upon or binding upon a woman to what? To make tawbah to Allah Ta'ala for her traveling without a mahram. طيب. So in regards to this nikah, which is called nikah al-Shighar, it says, لِأَنَّهُ يَتَحَكَّمُ فِيهَا وَلِيُّهَا فَلَا يُزَوِّجُهَا إِلَّا لِرَغْبَتِهِ. One of the reasons why this nikah is called shighar, because it is void, it comes from the origin khulu, which means to be void of something. Because the nikah or the marriage was void of a what? Dowry. It was void of a dowry. And the hikmah of why this type of marriage has been what? Prohibited. It says to raise harm of the woman. So she will not be what? Harmed. Whereas the wali could conduct or control her affairs in which, for example, he doesn't marry off except to suit his desires. It's like she's utilized like a merchandise for you. You marry your wife, your daughter off to me, to marry your daughter to me. So I can get what I want to satisfy my personal desires. He says, not for her what? Not looking at her interests and her desires. So that's the reason why this type of nikah is what? Prohibited. فَقَدْ يُزَوِّجُهَا غَيْرُ كُفْءٍ. Because what happened is, also another reason why it's impermissible for this marriage, a man might not be kuf'un. A man that will be able to suffice or be able to be someone that will what? Excuse me. He will be a kufu. Meaning he will be able to suffice her, or he will be able to take care of her properly. Or you have that type of what they call kufu. Meaning he's not able to what? Take care of her properly. It's a man that's not suitable for her. To satisfy her needs or her rights. That's what the meaning is of غير كفء. تفضل. To cover certain aspects or her needs, to satisfy her needs. To satisfy her needs. It doesn't matter whether it be financially or whether it be even sexually, intimately, because that's another important thing of marriage. Because that's one of the maqasid of marriage. Is to, for one, to protect each other, private parts from falling into something unlawful. And that's something that also has to be what? Has to be fulfilled. Because that's from the reasons why nikah, or marriage, has been legislated. So he tries to satisfy his desires by marrying his daughter off to the other, which will come as a result of it harm upon the woman. And also likewise the nikah has been voided of a dowry. It says وَجُعِلَتْ امْرَأَةٌ فِي مَقَالِبٍ امْرَأَةٍ فَهَذَا بَاطِلٌ. For woman has been made in exchange for another woman. And this nikah is what? Invalid. He says, however, listen to this. وإن كان هناك صداق للمرأتين كل واحدة لها صداق مثلها فمفهوم هذا التفسير أنه صحيح لارتفاع الضرر عن المرأة. هذا رأي الجمهور أنه إذا كان هناك صداق للمرأتين كل واحدة لها صداق مثلها فإنه لا مانع من صحة النكاح وإن كان فيه تبادل. ولكن الصحيح أنه إذا كان على المرأة ضرر حتى ولو اتفق على الصداق فإنه لا يصح. He says, Ahl ilm, even I remember Sheikh Muhammad Bazmoon mentioned the exact same thing. And it also coincides with the great Imam Salih Fawzan mentions. He says, now, let's just say in regards to a dowry was specified. Does it now validate the marriage? Does it validate the marriage? Let's just say now that both of them have nikah shighar. But there was a dowry specified and mentioned. That both of them will have a similar dowry. Right, everyone? That's what's understood from the hadith is that it would what? Validate it. If you look at the hadith and narration, one would take like from it that what? Is valid. That's what one would understand. And there's no problem from the validity or from the marriage being valid in this case. Even though it still has in it what? Tabadul, an exchange. Some from Ahl Ilm do say that it what? It's valid, but some of them say that it is what? Still in batil, it's still batil. So what we just say, and I mentioned this 2 weeks, to stay away from khilaf, just stay away from this type of marriage. So you do not fall into what? Khilaf. And that which also Sheikh Muhammad Bazmoon mentioned in the Sharh al-Muwatta, likewise he says, from what is apparent, is that also likewise is what? He mentioned this khilaf too. He said, but however, what is incumbent or what is apparent, that's better for parents just to leave it off. Leave off the shighar. Just to leave it off. And that one marries one separately with a dowry specified separately on this day and separately on a marriage on another specific day. Just to stay away from khilaf. طيب. But Sheikh Salih Fawzan mentions, it says, however, what is authentic, and this is what he says. If there's harm upon a woman, even if it was agreed upon a dowry, the marriage is invalid. If it's harm upon the woman, it is not لا يصح. He says, why? لأنه قد يجعل الصداق حيلة للوصول إلى رغبة الولي وحصوله على زوجه فهذا لا يجوز وهذا ما يسمى عند العوام بزواج البدل والحكمة في منعه هي مراعاة مصلحة المرأة. He said, what is correct though? He said that this marriage is what? Invalid. He says because one that the sadaqah, the dowry, is used as a type of trick in order for a person to attain, or for the wali to attain his desire, or to satisfy his desires, or the ulterior motive that he might have to satisfy his desire. So he will use his what? The sadaq as a hila, as a trick, in order to what? Attain what he wants, to satisfy his desires, in order for him to attain a spouse or a wife. He says, and this is not permissible. He says, in this type of marriage with the common folk is called zawaj al-badal. Zawaj al-badal. With the common folk, he call it the marriage of an exchange. The marriage of an exchange. And the hikmah of why it's been prohibited is for taking consideration the rectification and the benefit of the woman. For her to be what? Protected. So you see in our religion is to protect the what? The honor of the woman. And protect her honor. And to make sure she's not harmed in the marriage. In regards to how the media puts out the perception that Islam is to just oppress women, take advantage of them, cover them up, so men could just utilize them, use them as toys. La. Rather, the women, you'll find that all these narrations that we just brought is to what? Is to show that it's for preservation of her what? Her honor, her respect, her dignity, and herself. And preservation of her life likewise. That she's not taken advantage of. And she's not utilized like merchandise, or she's not utilized in a manner in which she's able to be taken advantage of or to be exploited. As we know, in this society, they're talking about women being free, to be walking around naked and showing her private part, that's being liberated. That's a type of slavery. Rather, that's a slavery where she's been exposed to be subjected to be exploited. As they see now on the billboards, you walk down the street, as soon as you see a car, what's on top of it? A naked woman, half clothed. Why? To be exploited. All these things and affairs is ordered to what? Exploit the woman and be her to be used as merchandise, and her to be what? Taken advantage of. And for men to enjoy by looking at her body, in order to what? Indulge in a manner just to be, as they so-called say, like a person that's what they call munharif jinsiyan, that he's like a pervert. For men just to look and take advantage of what he sees and laughs and enjoys by just looking at a woman and exploiting and showing her beauty. You understand, everyone? So that's the reason why you'll find in these narrations, it's for preservation of the woman, her honor and her dignity and respect, and her physically. All these narrations you see, it shows clearly that the religion calls to what, everyone? Preservation and protection of the woman. Not to oppress her, and not to what? Use tricks to try to use them in order to what? Exploit her or take advantage of her or utilize her where she's used as merchandise or toys or putty between the hands of men. طيب. The last narration we'll mention, and we'll stop here inshallah. It says, on the authority of Ibn Abbas, if one looks in his book, وعن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما أن جارية ذكرا. And this narration also emphasizes what we've been speaking about. أتت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فذكرت أن أباها زوجها وهي كارهة فخيرها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. رواه أحمد أبو داود بن ماجه وأعل بالإرسال. On the authority of Ibn Abbas رضي الله عنهما, that a jariyah bikran, that a woman who is a virgin, this sun just came right out. The woman who was a virgin came to the Prophet ﷺ, and she mentioned that her father married her off to a man that she did not like. She detested him. She was kariha. She did not like him, or she was not in agreement to her being married off to him. Listen to what it says. فَخَيَّرَهَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. The Messenger of Allah gave her the alternative. If you want to stay with him, or the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم will what? Nullify the marriage. It says the Messenger of Allah خَيَّرَهَا. It says the Hadeeth has the hidden weakness of what they call irsal. A hidden weakness of irsal. U'illa. As it says, if you're in books, it has a hidden weakness. What they call illa. Illa. What is the meaning of irsal? Irsal, the meaning of that in the affairs of hadith, the meaning of irsal is, if you look into isnad of the hadith, that there's a person dropped in the isnad, in the chain. But the one who was dropped in the chain was a sahabi. The one who was dropped in the chain of the narration was a companion. Meaning, a tabi'i related upon the Prophet ﷺ. That's what they're basically saying. So you had the Prophet ﷺ, then you had the sahabi, and then what comes after the sahabi is what? A tabi'i. So who was dropped out of the isnad was a sahabi. This type of isnad, Ahl Ilm says, is accepted. Why? Because of sahabi, all of them are what they call udul. All of them are trustworthy and reliable. All of them. Every single last one of the sahaba. All of the sahaba are udul. All of them are reliable. Even if you do not know who they are, you don't know his name in the isnad, if we know absolutely 100% sure that the one who is related, or the related this narration in the isnad is a sahabi, then what everyone? Then we know that the isnad yuhmalu ala al-ittisal. That the isnad, it is carried upon as if it's a hadith that's absolutely authentic and connected to the Prophet ﷺ. Because from the i'tiqad, the creed and the conviction of Ahl Sunnah without a shadow of a doubt is that we believe firmly, without any doubt, that all of the Sahaba have been promised paradise. All of them. Every single last one of them. The ayat where Allah Ta'ala clearly says, وَكُلُّ وَعْدَ اللَّهِ الْحُسْنَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about all of the Sahaba, whether they've been from those who spend before the conquest or after the conquest, even though one is in greater reward of a degree than over the other, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ended the ayah where He says, both of them, He has promised them Jannah. All of the Sahaba have been promised what? Paradise. So a person who's been promised paradise to let us know that they are what? Upright individuals. Because no one can enter paradise unless he's what? Upright. And he's from the people who Allah is pleased with. If Allah has told us that he's definitely enter a people in paradise and specify who they are, then we know Allah is pleased with all of them. And that's another ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, radiyallahu anhum wa radu an. They are pleased with Allah and Allah is pleased with them. And that's concerning all of the Sahaba. So the Sahaba, all of them from the i'tiqad of Ahl Sunnah, is that we believe all of the Sahaba are udul. All of them are upright and reliable and acceptable in their narrations. And if you find in the isnad that the Sahabi has been dropped, even though you don't know who he is, we still say that the hadith is authentic. Because we know that the Sahabi has been dropped out of the isnad, and for sure that it was a Sahabi. So it says, so the illah or the hidden weakness here doesn't harm the what? The chain. Doesn't harm the what? The chain. So it says here, من رواية التابع عند الرسول. We already just mentioned that. فالحديث أن جارية بكرا الجارية هي الصغيرة. So it says in the hadith, the one or the woman who was young, from the women who was a bikr, meaning she was a virgin. She came to the Prophet and said, my father married me off to a man that I detest. I did not like her, I detested him. Kariha, she hated him. Kariha, she detested him. And she did not agree with what? Marriage. فجعل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لها الخيار إن شاءت أن تبقى مع هذا الزواج وإن شاءت أن تفسخ دفعا للضرر عنها. So he gave her the choice, the alternative, whether or not to be what? That she can either stay with him or nullify the marriage. And this hadith is a benefit that the woman or the virgin is not forced to be married even from her father. It's not to be forced. Or other than her father. Al-Bikr tusta'dhan. As the Bikr is sought her permission. And it was awesome. We just said it's preceded in the previous narrations that her, given her permission, is that she remains what, everyone? Quiet. So this is an indication that the Wali al-Mar'ah, that the man is not to marry any type of woman off, or the virgin off, or whether she be a thayyib, except by her permission. And that, listen to what Sheikh Salih Fawzan mentions. وَأَنَّهُ لَا إِجْبَارٍ. Listen to this coincides exactly what I was saying. لَا إِجْبَارَ مَا دَامَتْ بَالِغَةً عَاقِلَةً. As long as she's reached a state or age of puberty and she understands. عَاقِلَة. She understands. It was good for her. So it's for her to either to choose what she wants or to reject it. So if this is the case and this takes place, then it's for the women to what? To go back, or in the Muslim country, she would just go back to the what? To the ruler or to the judge or the ruler, and he will look, investigate, and he will nullify the marriage. It'll be done. Here, oh boy, here in regards to what we're going through here, as I asked, this was years ago, back 2004. I asked Sheikh Salih Suhaimi, this was 2004, before the fitna hit. Sulaiman Rahili, Ibrahim Rahili. Any rate, because I wanted to make that clear for people who's listening. There's a reason why I said that. Salih Suhaimi, I remember I talked to him in 2004. I asked him, we're in the non-Muslim country, and we do not have a Muslim ruler to nullify these marriages. For a woman, for example, that's being beat up, domestically abused, or for a woman that's being oppressed. How do we raise this type of oppression off the woman? Then we will say to the man, brother, please, just let her go. So it won't cause extra hassle. You want to get the authorities involved. And all that's unnecessary. No, I'm not letting out the marriage. I don't care what you say. So what will we do? So a woman in this instance, what's left for us to do? I asked him this 2004. So he said that is in those countries, the only thing that's in front of you is that you have a lejna. You have a committee of students of knowledge and people involved. Pick the person who you think is the most understanding, and he's the one that will nullify the what? The marriage. But I said, well, some of these people here are crazy. I said that clearly. I said, some men are crazy. If they found out we nullified their marriage, they might try to shoot us or do something to us. It's something serious. I'm saying this in order to let us know what we have to go through in order to what? Help the communities. This is the things that we have to go through. So we risk what? Harm coming on us in order to help another individual. And actually, I didn't do this when I was in Philadelphia because the woman was being domestically abused, clearly. The bruises and the hits were on her face. I walked in, I couldn't believe it. Bruises and hits all on the woman's face. And I asked the brother, please, don't let it get to the point where we have to get the authorities involved. That's not befitting. I'm asking you, for Allah, leave the sister alone. No, I'm not letting out the marriage. Okay. So the only thing that was left was we got the aqd, drew it up, had witnesses, people involved in it, other men involved. So if you try to do something, you would have to go through all these people. So drew up the marriage, wrote my name on it, khalas, dissolved the marriage, kept it moving. That's what we had to do. And that's what Sheikh Salih Suhaimi back then, 2004, that's what he told us we had to do. Since here we're not in a Muslim land, a Muslim country, where we can what? Invalidate these marriages, where these affairs are for the what? The Muslim ruler and the authorities. And here, this is, of course, we're not the ruler and we're not the authorities. So this is how this will be solved, or this problem will be what? It will be attended, it will be nullified, or the method that we just mentioned. So in case a person asks a question, well, what about us here? How do we do this? If a woman is being domestically abused and a man doesn't marry, I want to let her out the marriage. This is the type of steps we would take. طيب, we'll stop here. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Any questions about the lesson?